And welcome back to this channel of 5 Minutes with KeRusso. We are looking at Leviticus. And if it's your first time, then stick with me the whole 5 minutes. See if you don't like this, okay? If you're coming back for repeatedly, then you're finding something good here, and I'm glad for that. What we're looking at in Leviticus is basically how to have a relationship with God. It doesn't take long to read before it becomes crystal clear that God thinks about things that we don't tend to think about. And it's pretty important to understand how God thinks if this relationship's going to work. You know, when I was dating the woman who would become my wife, it didn't take me long to realize that she doesn't think like I think. And if I wanted the relationship to work, I needed to understand her. Same thing with God, just on a bigger scale. You know, he's our creator, and ultimately he's going to be our judge. So we need to understand who he is and how he thinks if we want to have this relationship with him, because we sure need the relationship with him. Well, in Leviticus, God reveals with him being holy and him being clean and us living in the common realm, and because of either death or because of sin, becoming unclean consistently, that we needed to get clean if we're going to enter into his presence. And if we didn't do that, his holiness would judge us and kill us. That's what he was telling the Hebrews, and that's what we need to understand about a relationship with God. But thankfully, God says, here's how you get clean. And the early chapters, there's all these instructions about sacrifices, a purification offering or a guilt offering or a burnt offering. God basically is saying through these sacrifices, when you come under a penalty of death, that penalty has got to be satisfied. But we'll transfer the penalty over to an animal. The animal will die, shed its blood to help you get clean so you can continue to live. That's the principle behind animal sacrificing. But you need something else to get clean, all right? You can read about that in Leviticus 15. Over and over again, you can read about all these incidences where somebody might, when they would shed bodily fluid, you know, somebody might get sick and throw up. Man might have a nocturnal emission or have sex with his wife and semen's going to leave his body. A woman, her menstrual cycle and blood's going to leave her body. Or gives birth to a baby, and again, more blood's going to come out. You see, when all those bodily fluids are in you, they're still alive. It's still alive because it's in the system that can support it. But when it comes out of your body, then it dies. And that means you come into contact with death. You are now unclean, okay? You didn't do anything wrong, but you're unclean still. You're unclean. And if you touch something, it becomes unclean. It's highly transferable. In fact, if somebody touches something that you touched while you were unclean and it became unclean, they also became unclean. So it's a mess real quick. So how do you undo all this stuff? Leviticus 15 says there's something simple you need to do. You need to take a bath. You need to rinse whatever became unclean, whatever object became unclean, or if you, a person, became unclean, you need to take a bath. Not because you stink, but because you're unclean. And you don't want to enter God's presence when you're unclean. Blood and water are necessary to become clean in God's eyes so that you can enter into his presence. And you and I need to remember that because, you see, we still live in the common realm where there's still death and where there's still sin, those things that make us unclean. And sometimes it's just us living, and sometimes it's us sinning, but we get unclean. So how do we get clean? Thankfully, God figured it all out, so you don't have to spend all your time in the shower, and I don't have to spend all my time in the shower. He did it through the blood of Jesus. When Jesus died on the cross and shed his blood, he took the penalty, the death sentence. He took care of that. Now, how do I come into contact with that blood? I do that when I am baptized in water and come into contact with the blood of Jesus that way. That makes me clean. You'll read that in Romans 6. You'll read it in 1 Peter 3. You'll read it in 1 John in several places, okay? That's how we get clean. Jesus' blood and the waters of baptism. Now we can enter into the presence of a holy God. There's a place in the New Testament where this is spoken of all in one place. Let me read this for you. Hebrews chapter 10, starting in verse 19. Therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened up for us through the curtain, that is his body, And since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with full assurance that faith brings, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience and having our bodies washed with pure water. Okay? You want to come in the presence of God with confidence and no fear? You need the blood of Jesus, you need the water of baptism. That's how God thinks. You and I need to think like him, okay? All right, hope you're blessed by this. Leave a note if you want to, comment, or send an email at booksbykerusso@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time. Be blessed.